All right. Hello, everybody.
Oh,
Welcome to a special edition, off-cycle edition of Artcraft Crowfall Dev Q&A. We thought we'd get everybody together to talk about domains, since we've now gone through all of the talent trees for all of the class overhaul stuff. The next step was to explain a little bit more about how domains work, how they relate to disciplines, and how they can be used to put character builds together. So I'm Todd Coleman, Creative Director. Gents, introduce yourselves, please.
I'm Thomas Blair, the Design Director.
I'm Ray Shelley, a Principal Designer.
All right, so this time we're going to basically dive pretty directly in because we have a specific thing that we're going to be discussing today. I guess to kick it off, we might want to just start with a basic reminder, refresher course of what's going on with the talent trees, what are domains, and how do they relate to disciplines?
I can take a swing at this. So, for I don't know, we did a reswizzle of some of the talent trees. We've been releasing those, periodically throughout the past couple of weeks. And so I think we got a screenshot somewhere of one of our talent trees, which is, they kind of condense down together, and we're trying to make, each thing have a choice, right? You're looking for hard choices, like I might want this and I might want that, but I can't get everything, so I have to make some hard choices, and sometimes I have to work my way to something I really want, and otherwise I can't get everything I want, basically. And then at the end of these things, once you pick your promotion class, then you work your way down that, and then you get a choice of what I'm calling domains. So in this example, we've got, here's the war domain, but you have three options and you can choose one domain. Now, what a domain does is it gives you access to a certain group of disciplines. So before we had, and Blair knows the numbers probably better than I do. So I think we had around 30 major disciplines, and pretty much everyone had access to the majority of them. Well, what we've done now is we've created a lot of different disciplines. I think there's over 110 majors and some large number of minors. Again, Blair's more intimately familiar with the numbers.
There's 111 majors now.
111 majors. Okay. So there's a lot. Okay. And what we've done is we sort of took those and spread them around. We've got race groups, so that if you're part of a particular race, you have access to some. We've got class groups, and so if you're part of a class, you have access to some others. And then we have these domains. And what this does is that lets the player make a choice. Like, do I want to pick, say, this war domain? And then that will open up more options for me to pick from. And the domains have a lot in them. Like the race and class have some cool stuff. It's just not a huge number of them. Domains have a nice big number. And if I don't like the war domain, I can choose a different domain. And each promotion class gets a choice of 3, and you can only pick one. So if I take, if I'm assassin and I work my way down the line, and maybe I take cutthroat, and then, maybe I'll pick, the plague domain or something. And then within that domain, there's a whole bunch of disciplines to choose from. And then just like before, you've got your slots and you equip those. And that's sort of, how you build your character. And I've now been looking at these domains as almost a, you've got your promotion class. It's almost a prestige class, right? It's that one more step. But, if I and somebody else chooses plague on our cutthroats, there's different disciplines in there. And we could totally take different ones. I could have taken some class ones. I could have chosen different talents if I wanted to. I could have taken some race stuff from a different race. It's how you choose to put those things together is what's going to make your cutthroat versus mine.
Well, yeah, one thing I think that probably should be pointed out is that the domains are not exclusive, right? So a given, if you're looking for a particular major, it's not like I have to go take war. That's the only way to get it. I mean, I'm sure there are some exclusives, but a lot of the disciplines are spread and come out of multiple. They basically surface in multiple places, and that was done on purpose, right? So it could be, hey, I really want to take this major. I could take it by trying to get to war, or I could take it by trying to get to death. Oh, or I could just make a Stoneborn because they have it as basically, there's effectively a racial domain, right, for each of the races that is a collection of disciplines that they get direct access to without having to get the access through one of the domains.
That's correct.
So same with the classes, right? So you've got a racial domain, a class domain, and then all of the other optional kind of domains. And then it's a many-to-many relationship between what majors and minors go into which domains.
Exactly. There could be you see a really cool discipline that you want, and it could be in a wide variety of things. Or as you said, it could be exclusive, and there's, certain reasons we had to do that for one reason or another. But for the most part, there are multiple ways to get to an individual discipline. All right. So,
and the total number of not including race and class domains, the total number of domains currently is 15, right?
Correct. There are 15 domains, and the other ones I've been calling like your race group or your class group. And I've been, this is what I've been doing in my mind, at least, that the domains are these things at the end that you buy access to.
And Mira Luna just asked, are minors in the domains as well? And the answer is yes. The minors are also in the domains, and they're also in the racial and the class-based domains too.
That is correct. So yeah, they are still included in these things. Complete groups of disciplines, both majors and minors.
So the beginning of the catalog, by the way, is going to the game, and it's poured through this. There are so many interconnections that effectively what I wanted, the design that I asked for was I wanted to be able to design characters both top or bottoms down and top up. So top up means I have an idea for a class that I want to build, so I just start at the bottom with my racing class, and then I'm just kind of building as I go. Top down is I'm out in the game and I come across this cool major discipline that I think will synchronize really well with this other power or this other discipline. So I need to back down and say, okay, what kind of character concept will eventually lead me to this destination? So I wanted to be able to, because once you have that kind of a system, you can basically wander back and forth, up and down forever, because you'll start on a concept and get somewhere and you'll see something that'll make you go, oh, wait, but that gives me a different idea. And then you wander back down to see how you can incorporate that idea. And you do that a couple times and suddenly you're on a totally different concept than the one you started with. So that's what we were going for there, is we want a big tree to explore.
Yeah, definitely. And then one of the things that got added here also with these disciplines is a sense of progression, right? So, and I know Blair handled all of this, so I'll let him talk about the progression.
Hey, Blair, one question from the chat real quick. How many minors are in right now?
89. 89 and 111 are the two numbers. And so just for numbers' sake, we got rid of a lot of the old minors that we didn't like anymore. Like, I think uniform leather is a good, replaced it with something else. So in many cases, it's not all of the old stuff because we didn't like some of the old stuff and you guys didn't like it. So we just kind of threw that on the heap and replaced it with something else that was more fun. And but yeah,
we resurrected some of the old things that we previously played with and cut. We brought them back, kind of like a greatest hits, and turned them into new majors. So
yeah, absolutely. There are definitely some ones that I'm a little worried about that we resurrected. We'll see how it plays, and we'll see. Josh went through and made a whole ton of tweaks to a lot of these powers. So when Ray starts going through these, you may associate a power with a specific thing. That power may do something very different now. But we reused a lot of the words that we had used previously to describe things, but the powers actually may do something completely different now. So just be aware of that. But let's talk about progression for a second. So this was an experiment that was in on the the current set of crafting majors, which is as you make a better discipline, it actually gets more statistical value out of it. So everybody seemed to like that. So we incorporated that into all of the majors and minors, such that you'll notice the ones you buy from the vendors, they have no statistical attributes on them. They just give you the power. And then as you get a better quality discipline, you will notice that more stats get added and higher values. It's actually on you now, where it's kind of a bad choice to go not get a better discipline, right? So just the higher quality disciplines having more stats should mean, hey, I want to go get the better ones because I'm just going to get more stats out of it. And of course, we can tweak how much we're giving out just to make sure, like if it's not juicy enough and there really isn't that much difference between certain quality levels, we'll tweak that. But this is kind of the path that we're going down now. We haven't pulled that vessel quality thing yet. We're still talking about it, but I have a feeling we will.
I guess let's go ahead and jump into the inside a domain. So the first domain that we're going to look at is war. You'll see that that's around in a bunch of different places, but let's look at the first group of the majors inside the war domain. So, and I'm not going to talk about everything. There's just a lot here. So I'm just going to give some highlights as we go, and I'm sure you guys will sort of tear these apart in screenshots or whatever later. But I did just want to talk about it. Let me get my name on it. Let's talk about Blade Dancer. So one thing I want to point out here with Blade Dancer, and I assume you guys can read the text. I know it's small for me, but I'm sure you guys can read it. We've got, you know, a group slashing penetration buff, and there's the blood price is the healing orb and attack power buff. But the thing I want to point out is if you notice, these seem themed around particular weapon builds, right? So what we wanted to do is to allow players to focus more on weapon type builds. I want to make a slashing build. I want to make a piercing build. I want to do a crushing build, whatever. And so you'll start to see the permeate through a variety of disciplines, okay? And that's, again, one of those things I just wanted to point out. And again, you guys can pull through some of the details. And you notice you can also see, you know, oh, this is, you know, like Blade Master, for example, is available in War or Death. So as Todd was talking about, there's 2 ways to get here. And you're going to see that sort of stuff all over the place. Go to the next one. So the next one here that I want to talk about is Dirty Fighter. So again, the thing here is, you know, Black Mantle's a common thing. We've seen that. But again, with Festering Wounds, you know, it'll reduce the healing bonus of the target you put it on. It also exposes the healer if they heal. And then we've added on here Crazy Pills, which is it'll increase your damage on low resource. And that's a passive, right? So here we've got an active and a passive on here. And it's, of course, great to use against healers. Now, you guys saw the new healing class, and so healing's now more prevalent. So we've got to give you ways to deal with that. And that's what Dirty Fighter does here. Okay, let's hit the next one. This one, okay, now this one's fun to me. Let's look at Knife Grinder. Okay, so before we had talked, we had shown the assassin class, right? And I know there was a lot of like, oh, Blackguard, what can they do? I just want to point out a couple of things here. So if we look at Knife Grinder, it's got Long Live the Fighter, which is a passive, and it adds a bleeding debuff to an enemy on every 3rd basic attack. Okay, that's great. And Shrapnel, which is a passive, that when you, on a chance to attack, or when you attack, there's a chance to spread the bleeds around to nearby enemies. Okay, so let's think about that. The Blackguard on Assassin has access to the War domain. So he can now start bleeding people, and he's got Impale and some other, or he's got some other things to cause bleeds. He can spread these bleeds around. Then he uses Dagger Storm, which then automatically poisons bleeding targets. Now, he can bleed and poison in a huge radius. I mean, you start to these synergies and these combinations, and this is just on the surface. There's a lot more synergies and combinations that are out there. But I just wanted to give you an idea of because he chose this domain, he could get some of these things and really start to build some interesting builds and some interesting concepts. So yeah, that's shrapnel. I'm excited to see what you guys do with that. Okay, so those are the majors. Let's go to the next one. These are the minors. Now, if you notice, minors now have stats. All right. So there you go. There's that there. And let's look at mark for death. So this one, first it's just, I think it's a really cool power, but first it's also a power, right? It's activatable powers now appear on minors. So mark for death, marking a target, or you mark a target to take increased damage from your group. So again, you stay coordinated as a group, you can really do some serious damage. So again, these are minors. Minors should be pretty good now. You know, you should want these minors. You're going to need to make choices like, man, what minors am I going to take? What build do I want to make? How am I going to take a minor and pair it with my major? And whether that's for my class or my domain or whatever, and how's that going to work with the talents I chose to create some interesting build? That's the goal here, okay? All right, let's look at the next one. So the next one, I mean, Spirit Whip you've seen before, but again, as the concept of whether it's spreading bleeds, spreading poisons, you know, doing things like that, you can start to see more and more synergies and combinations here, right? So, oh, if I hit multiple targets with this, then I can put more bleeds on people. Then I can hit shrapnel where it spreads to more people. Then I do my deck. I mean, like I said, you start how things work. And that was the goal with this here. And this is just one domain, right? This is the war domain. All right, so let's look at the next domain, which is going to be dark. So we'll look at the majors. We'll start looking at those. Okay. So you saw, I mean, Blair showed the progression for Naiad, but let's talk about Windlord. All right. So one thing that we wanted to do was there were a lot of cool powers and classes, and we wanted to sort of open those up a bit, let some other builds exist in different classes that had access to some of these powers. And Pursuit is one of those. So, you know, we've heard people who play melee, they're having troubles closing sometimes on some of the ranged. Problem solved, all right? And there's a lot of ways to do it. This isn't the only way, but this is just an example of a good closing power that we thought would be fun to be available to more people. Now, it's in the dark domain, so you have to have access to dark domain to get to it. But there you go. Let's see. All right, let's look at the next one. Now, let's see. In here, Corrupted Soul. So let's see here. We've got our Shrivel, which of course it's Black Mantle, Expose, it's Shrivel. And we have Soul Steal. So this is an attack that deals damage to enemies in a field and returns health to you. So again, this is, you know, there's a little bit of heal here. There's damage here. It's 2 activatable power. So majors can have 1 active, 1 passive, 2 actives, 2 passive. A hard rule. It's what makes this thing sort of work together, right? And this is an example of one that's got 2 active powers. I know there were some people who were like, I love to fill up my power bar. I want all the powers. Well, if that's what you want, there are ways for you to fill out that power bar. There are others who are like, I got enough powers. I don't want any more powers. I want fewer that do what I want them to do. And now you've got options. You take things that have fewer powers if that's what you want. You take things with more powers if that's what you want. Good for you. All right. Let's look at the next one. Those are the majors for dark. Now let's move into some. Okay. So one thing I want to point out here is barbed stake. So now stakes are now available as minors, or they're on disciplines. All right, they can appear in a variety of places. So that is, again, something that was available in certain classes. We wanted to expose that to others because we thought it was fun. The other thing I want to point out is concussive trap. So now traps are now available to other classes. Now, the Rangers or the Warden is going to be the best at it. That's what they're geared towards. But we thought it'd be interesting if that's the build that someone wanted to do in another class. Like, what if I spent my talent, or not talent, I spent my discipline slots focusing on this instead of focusing on other things? That could be an interesting build. I'm kind of curious what people are going to come up with. And granting access to things like that will create some of those interesting builds. Okay, so, and again, I want to point out concussive trap, that's an active, you drop your trap, congratulations. So, all right, let's look at the next one. So now you'll see explosive trap, right? Or fairy trap. Now, if you'll notice, these are passives, okay? These aren't separate traps. If I've got concussive trap, that's, if I get explosive trap, that just makes that same trap stun and add burning. They become additive, right? If I get, and there's another one coming up too, and they just start stacking. If that's the build I want to do, I equip all these things, and all of a sudden, like, man, this trap is really good, but I just spent how many of my minor slots to make that happen, right? But again, it's all about the builds you want to make. What do you want to do? How can you get creative with this stuff? That's the goal. All right, let's look at the next one. So there's toxic trap, and there's serrated trap. So there's a lot of trap types. And then recon, again, is an example of something that was available inside a class that we wanted to bring to other players. So if you're trying one thing, get into dark, and this is what you want to do, you now have access to it. Again, that was the big thing. Okay, let's look at the last domain for today. It's going to be light, okay? So these, let's see, these are the majors here. Let's look at Exorcist. So in Exorcist, if you notice in the stat area, it says bonus damage holy. So before, that had sort of been this other area that was, hey, this unmitigated damage, we didn't want to mess with it. But then, you know, we got to talking, and people didn't use it very much because you couldn't boost it or you couldn't build a character around it. Well, I remember I was talking about building characters for damage types. Here you go. And this is that. And another thing I want to point out with Exorcist is you notice Soul Steal, that was on Corrupted Soul. So just because a power exists on one discipline doesn't mean that power can't exist on a different discipline paired with something else, right? So you can still start to build some interesting combinations. And then Blessed Symbol, that was cleric only. And again, that power is now available to others in the light domain. Okay, let's hit the next one. This is Naiad. You guys have taken a look at this, but I want to point out something specifically on Naiad, and that's the cleanse. So I know a lot of people have been talking about aura emitters. Well, if you notice that cleanses them. And so the cleanse will remove from the entire group bleeds, diseases, poisons, and aura emitters. So we now have a variety of these types of things to sort of help with these sort of stacking damages and debuffs. All right, let's, there we go. Let's see, in this one, Transcendent Warrior. Let's talk about this one. So again, this has to do with auras. Auras were a cleric only thing. And what we want to do is bring that concept, you know, to more classes. So what we did is we created some new auras to allow that sort of gameplay to occur. So with a Guiding Light aura, that's a group damage bonus for Fire and Holy. Again, stacking damage types, so you guys can create some builds. And Divine Aura, which is the you increase your support power and your personal healing modifier for the group. So if you've got your healer there, maybe another healer, maybe you're not the healer, but you're more in support, you can take this to support your healer out so that they can take other things. It all depends on how you want to team and build your group. But I thought auras were fun and cool and we should sort of be using them more. So that's what that is. Okay, let's check out some of the minors here. And we've got this one for meditation, which is out of combat. You can restore your own resource and stamina quickly, so less downtime. So maybe you stealth out, get out of the way, whoop, you get your stuff back. Or if you were harvesting, and you're like, you know what, I'm out of combat, I'm fine, get your stamina back. There's a few other things that you can use for that, but just one of those, you know, hey, you're out of combat, let's just get you back into the fight. All right. And then, of course, I'm sure you guys are going to look at some of those other ones in there. All right, let's look at the next one. This is the last one we've got. It's the last group. Is this the last group? Yeah, it's the last group of miners for light. And one thing I wanted to point out here, resurrection. Yeah, resurrection is now on a minor disk. So if other people want to res, they can, but it takes up a slot. You have to give up something else to take that. But again, it's one of those things where, you know, what kind of build do you want to make? And there are a lot of tools available now. All right. So we've only looked at 3 domains, and you saw the quantity of things that are here. And I only talked briefly about a handful of them, and a few of the combinations, a few of the things we did to give access to other players. We've got weapon type builds, damage type builds. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of new meta. There's a lot of things that I'm hoping you guys can put together and come up with some really cool and fun builds that we never thought of, right? I know what Todd likes to say is, hey, yeah, sure, there's a ton of builds, and some of them are going to be terrible, and some of them are going to be great, and that's absolutely true.
Yeah, that's actually part of the exploration and the skill of the game. I mean, we have no, it's not as simple as rock, paper, scissors, right? It's not.
Right.
It's much more complicated than that. So
yeah, and there are a lot of combinations. So like I said, you can pick certain talents that seem, you know, I know people have been looking at the talent trees, and you know, you look at them and that's the only box you've been looking at, and so you're like, well, this pairs with what you take. But once you start folding in these new disciplines, you start to be like, you know what, maybe I do want this other talent, because if I take this domain, which gives me access to these disciplines, pair really well with these talents over here that I wasn't considering before, but I'm considering now because that might be a really cool build. And what you guys come up with is the stuff that I'm really excited to see. I'm really excited.
Yeah, the optimization to me is part of the fun, right? That's part of the way the design, having the hard choices. I think that there was a basic question that was asked when we first announced this. It was like, well, why don't you just let everybody have access to everything, because that's the most number of combinations? And strictly speaking, yes, that's true. If you just allow if there's no prereqs at all and everybody can take every single thing, then that is the most number of combinations. But it's not as interesting of a tree to explore, right? The min-maxing opportunities are actually better and more nuanced if you have to be clever about, well, I really want to get this and I really want to get this. And that's going to be a challenge to get because I don't have that many points to spend, or I don't have that many slots. So it makes it that much more, it feels that much better when you find one of those, right? When you find one of those combinations that really sings, that really comes together, that's the moment that we're trying to get to. And if you just have everybody has access to everything, you don't get that. So I do think that we will hit a balance spot with this where the number of combinations that come out of it is going to be staggering. And the number of good and bad builds, like, that's going to be staggering. I think it'll feel really fun to explore up and down the tree. If it turns out that we go through this process and we're like, hey, there's just not enough, we need more combinations, we certainly can always open up the domains. Like we have the ability to go in and add new domains that are just grouping other different ways to group existing things. We can open up and add new things to domains if we want to, that'll create new build combinations. Like it is a very, very extensible system for us to go in and add things to over time. So I think it's just a much better foundation. I saw a comment earlier that somebody was like, this changes the game. I was like, yes, it does. It very much does. It changes the game.
Yeah, there's a lot there. And as you know, Blair said last time, it was a re-swizzle of what was there. So, you know, some of the same things that you've seen before, they exist. A lot of the same powers and things that you had before, they're scattered around. They're in there. Not everything is, but most things are scattered around inside there. And then again, as he said today, just because you recognize the name of something, it might act very differently. And then even if you see the name of something and then you read the description and it does what it did before, that doesn't mean the values are the same. So because we changed a lot of other things, we did a balance pass on a lot of these too, based on player feedback. This wasn't being used. Okay, well let's juice it up. Let's make it cool.
Right.
So
yeah, I think that was one of my favorite things. In the playtest yesterday, I was using a confessor, and I had Grabthar's hammer on him. And prior to this, I needed a hammer to actually use that power. But now it's just I can use it as a confessor. So I was just using Grabthar's hammer, and that is cool. So a lot of the powers that you're familiar with, again, there might be changes. This is garbage, but no, in fact, we made it good, and we made it usable by more people to make it good. So don't get kind of open your mind. Do the whole Kuato, open your mind.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good piece of advice, is just step back, open your mind, and examine these things from a new perspective. I mean, it's fine you've got your knowledge before, and that'll give you a leg up on sort of how to put some of these things together, but come at it with fresh eyes and see what you can put together, see what works and what doesn't work. And, and I know I've read a bunch of the forums, and we're not going to bat 1,000, right? So not everything's going to be perfect. But what we want you to do is to play with this stuff with those fresh eyes and that open mind, see what you can come up with, and find areas like, oh man, this would have been cool if this had worked with this, but this didn't quite did this, and you're going to find a bunch of that stuff. And we would definitely love that kind of feedback, because we want this to be, those hard choices. God, I want this and I want this. Which one do I take? They're both cool. Or here's a bunch of them I want. They're all cool. What do I take? And so you're going to start coming up with build concepts, and then you're going to try some things out. And as Todd said, some will work, some won't, and that's okay. Not everything's going to work. Don't expect everything to work. But playing around with this stuff and really exploring and experimenting it with that open mind and those fresh eyes. I'm like I said before, I'm really excited to see what y'all come up with.
Okay, so a couple of the questions that came out. One is about wipes and what's going to happen with wiping. So when it goes to test, the easy answer right now is we're just going to wipe test, because that makes it easy. You guys have infinite resource vendors there, so you can take, it will take you no time to get things back. On live, the answer honestly is I just don't know. Our first goal was to get this stuff in, and then we're going to take a look and see what has to be wiped and what doesn't. Worst case scenario, it will require items and characters, but not passive training, I think. So I don't have a firm answer for you on that. I'm trying to get the goal. Our goal was to get this out to you guys as quickly as possible so you can start looking at it. So the easiest thing to do for that is to get it on test, knowing that there's going to be bugs. I mean, we found things like, oh, this power had a decimal point that was misset, and it's just clearly was never supposed to do that much damage. Like stuff like that just happens. And there's with 1,500 powers and all the combinations, there's going to be a lot more testing than our QA group, even though they work 24/7, literally, because we have guys that work overseas testing builds overnight. They can't possibly find all the issues that you guys can. So we're going to try and get it up there as quick as we can. It is not quite ready, but it is a lot closer than I think you guys expect that it is, which is pretty cool. So hopefully we'll be coming back to you very, very soon with the first thumbs up and telling you that you can get in and start kicking the tires for us and giving us your feedback. Another question that we had was about how do you get these? Current plan is to keep them on thralls. We haven't quite figured out how to do that. I like the idea that that thralls, you kill this guy, you're going to get this discipline. That seems like a hell of a lot of thralls, so it might make more sense to move them to one thrall. A specific thrall is a particular domain. So that unfortunately would add some RNG back in, but maybe we can drop more than one at one time. Moving the miners to the thrall lieutenants, that is still in consideration. So it's something that we're still looking at and thinking about.
So Ganelon asked, will it still be primarily combining 3 discs of the same quality to get the next rarity? The answer to that is yes. Is the highest drop still blue off of mobs? We actually, none of us liked that there was a gap in between white and blue. We just kind of jumped over a quality level there. So all of the thralls will drop green quality. So your upgrade path to make a legendary discipline is 27 of those green drops. And I think it works out to something like 108,000 gold. So it's adding a nice gold sink back into the economy, and you will want the higher quality ones, as you see, because they are far better than the vendor purchased ones.
But we're allowing people to mix and match more, right? We're taking the restrict. We believe that we're going to take away the restriction that tied vessel quality to discipline quality.
Right. Yeah. I talked about that one earlier. This is the mechanic of using the combines. And Yanni asked a question. I'm confused. Minors disciplines say traits, but majors say domains. So ultimately, mechanically on the back end, it's all what we call an adjective, which is it is a trait. So trait is actually, you go to your traits page and it will list the domain that you've taken, which unlocks that series of disciplines. So all of our equipment says trait on it, so don't think that that's going away.
One question, yeah, I saw that one too. That was flying by. Is in the training trees, what are you getting? Are you getting a domain or are you getting a trait? And really, you're just on the back end, behind, underneath the covers. What that equates to is it's giving you an adjective or a trait that we then use as a prereq. I had a question about people know that the Unity devs are in our offices right now virtually. They're not they would be here technically if it wasn't for pandemic, but they're working full time. And when somebody just basically asked, how's that going? Seems to be going pretty well. We found a fair number of things that we're going to go and tackle. I think we've got a list of about, I want to say, a couple dozen items that are combination of art or tech or just the pipeline, the way things are set up and imported, that we think could have a pretty significant impact. So that's pretty cool.
So someone asked the question, is this taking the place of the November Q&A? And no, it's not. Nope. This is not an official ACE Q&A, even though we are Q&Ing. I didn't show the card, so it lacks that piece of authenticity. But yeah, you will still get the November one, and more than likely.
I'll give you a little bit of a hint on that too. So here's the thing: this build was cooking so fast and seemed like it was going to be hitting test that we were not going to have a chance, we thought, to talk about the disciplines if we waited till the next Q&A. So for that reason, we're like, oh, I guess we need to just have one. So we asked WSU, can you throw together an off-cycle Q&A for us, just specifically to talk about this, so that when they get into test, they'll have some idea what this thing is and then put it through the paces. So.
Yeah, so you're still going to get the November. This is a bonus. Yay, bonus. Everybody likes bonus. And were we going to show the slide on the Crow Appreciation Rewards just for everyone who shows up? The October, November ones? Oh, hey, look at that. Great job, Emily. It looks like we were giving away the Flaming Sword and the... What was that? The weapon skin and the sigil. I haven't seen that sigil yet in game. I tend to see most of these because they come through me to actually get built and put in the game. I haven't seen that one yet. And then the dragon sigil and belt totem. I really like the belt totems, as well as the badge slot items. They're just a cool way to customize your character. And for those of you who have been here from the beginning, thank you. And you guys will have all kinds of stuff later. Don't enjoy those things. They're always cool to have, and they're good moments where you can just flex on everybody. and be like, check it. I was here since the beginning. Okay. That's pretty much it, unless you got anything else you
All
want to say.
right, I think that's it. That's at least enough for to get you guys started.
Yeah, it's plenty.
Before we get you off into test. So I'm excited to get this in front of you. I think it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, thanks for showing up, everybody. Thanks, Ray, for walking through the domains for us. And
yeah, sure thing.
I'm super excited to get this on test.
Me
There is
too.
a lot of fun features we point to as well. There's beyond the optimization, there's some things in particular that I've been waiting 3 years for. I submitted the ticket 3 years ago, and it just got completed this milestone, and we'll talk about that later when we're up on test, but look forward to it.
Yeah, good.
Hey, Debbie Sue, I'm assuming you're watching. Gokwa just said, how about some crowns giveaways in the future? And that's a pretty good idea, actually. I think that would be pretty cool, because the nice thing about that is that's a giveaway that's kind of everybody can take advantage of it. So that's pretty cool. So, all right. I think that's it for this time. So want to thank everybody for coming out. Thank you for following us on the Facebooks and the Twitters and all the other places on the interwebs. Thank you for showing up to all these chats to listen to us go on and on and on about our game. And until, I guess, early November, we will see you guys in game. So thanks again.